Another guy worth $25 billion or more, the one, the only, from The Athletic, Matt Barrows. Good morning, Matt. How are you? Do I have Matt? There we go.
Yeah, now you do.
Hello, Matt.
Oh, I'm here. I've been here.
Matt, would you live your life any differently if you were worth $50 billion as opposed to $25 billion?
Yeah, it's so funny. I was just talking about this with somebody else. No, I'd probably spend $38 on food all week just like I do now. You can't... I mean, I guess this is the famous bear trap, but I feel like you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You know, the leopard can't change his spots this late into the game. I mean, I am who I am.
You're not pulling up to training camp Jalen Ramsey style, but in some just awesome Ferrari Testarossa convertible.
Too much upkeep, man. I mean, it's all about low maintenance for me at this part of my life. I don't want to have to deal with all that crapola.
Matt Barrows from The Athletic covers the 49ers. We talk to him every week during the NFL season about the San Francisco 49ers. So with training camp opening tomorrow, let me give you the big softball, which is this. Since we haven't talked in a while, what do you believe, or is there a single biggest storyline or question going into camp?
Well, I mean, you're going to hate me for saying this, but it's the QB. The franchise quarterback who made $37 million last year and who only started 3 games and wasn't all that good in those 3 games either, completing less than 60% of his passes. So Jimmy Garoppolo's health, which I think is going to be, not even noticeable, that left knee that tore on September 26th. And where he is in the Shanahan system. What year is this really? And it's a bit convoluted because he came in late in 2017. As I said, he missed most of last season, and he's had most of this offseason. So where exactly is he? Is it year 2? Is it year 1? Is it somewhere in the middle? Because I think that is a big deal. If you look at Matt Ryan, the Falcons' former quarterback who spent 2 years under Shanahan, he had a very mediocre year 1 under Shanahan and had an MVP-like year 2. So once the quarterback gets it, once he's on the same page as his receivers, he can really flourish in this system. We just don't know where Jimmy Garoppolo is at this point.
Matt, the running backs core for the 49ers is very interesting. Obviously signing Tevin Campbell during the offseason. You still have Matt Breida, Tevin Coleman, excuse me, not the R&B singer Tevin Campbell. Tevin Coleman, you have Matt Breida, who's come off a great season last year. Where does Jerick McKinnon factor into the offense?
Yeah, I think he's going to be somebody who's, I don't want to say held in abeyance, but he's going to be better in the second half of the season than he is the first half. These guys go through their conditioning test tomorrow. They take their physical. There is a chance that McKinnon begins camp on the PUP list, physically unable to perform. I don't think he would last long there, but it just goes to show where he is. His ACL occurred on September 1, and with running backs, it takes a long time to get back to form. I think with Tevin Campbell on the Tevin Coleman on the roster and some other and some more depth. I mean, it affords the 49ers some ability to take Jerick McKinnon along slowly and lean on those other guys early on, and then all of a sudden, wham bam, maybe after that week 4 bye, I don't know when it is, that Jerick McKinnon is kind of rolled out more fully into this offense, which is what Shanahan wanted to base last year's offense on and never got the chance to do that. So I think there's a real desire to have him back in the fold, but like I said, they can afford to bring him back a lot more slowly.
Here with Matt Barrows of The Athletic. He covers the 49ers. Matt, the pass rush was obviously priority number 1 for the Niners this offseason, but it looked like they made receiver priority number 2 using a 2nd and 3rd round pick on Deebo Samuel and Jalen Hurd. I wanted to ask about the receiving core, but I don't think we can really do that quite yet because Deebo Samuel is the most pressing question because he hasn't signed that rookie deal. Are the Niners making any headway there, or do you have any updates on his status and whether he'll be ready for day 1 of camp?
I do not. I mean, both he and Nick Bosa are represented by the same agency, CAA, Creative Artists, And the same guys are working on the deal. So I can only imagine that the same hiccup with the 49ers with Bosa is what's causing the delay with Deebo Samuel. My colleague Vic Tafer wrote a really interesting story recently about one of the local agency groups, Doug Hendrickson, C.J. LeBoy, and they noted that they and all agents really hate that April 1 date that the 49ers put in all of their contracts, which is a date that the 49ers could cut a player, it comes after free agency, so that player has less of an opportunity to latch on to another team should that happen. So it's something that I'm sure agencies would like to eradicate, and I just wonder whether that's part of what CAA is trying to do, is get rid of that language so that it's not, part of the boilerplate contracts that the 49ers are drawing up, because I know that agents from coast to coast really don't want that, and it's sort of been a precedent for the 49ers.
Matt, let me go back to the macro view here, and I'll give you a little two-parter. Kyle Shanahan, Jimmy Garoppolo, John Lynch. Is there even the semblance or the beginnings of a clock on any or all of those three? And if so, who's the clock, in your opinion, ticking the loudest for?
Well, I think it's the ticking the loudest for Lynch, and I wrote about that today a bit. I think the first big head that would roll, should this team not hit its stride and should they struggle again, would be the defensive coordinator, Robert Saleh. But John Lynch also is sort of part of that defense. I mean, he's the one who's basically putting the rubber stamp onto all defensive players that are brought in, and there have been some real question marks among those defensive players. Reuben Foster, Solomon Thomas, Malcolm Smith had a big free agent contract in 2017, hasn't come close to living up to that, and then they spent a lot of money on Quan Alexander, who's coming off an ACL this year, and I think around the league, there's some question mark about whether he was worth all that money. So if that defense falls flat on its face this year, I think there's going to be a lot of question marks. My sense is that John Lynch would escape the guillotine this year, but that's starting to become a big question mark on this team. The players they bring in, and whether some of them should have been taken in the draft.
Matt,
I'm sorry, that's the train, isn't it?
the train's back. Yeah, you guys. It must be like a little after 8 because here comes the train right off my front porch.
I missed the train. Here you go, Jay. Yeah, the train in the background. Go ahead.
Yeah, Matt. The Niners did a lot this season to address the pass rush, but they had one of the worst secondaries in all of football last year, and really didn't do anything to address that in the offseason. Are they just expecting some exponential growth amongst the guys they already have?
Yeah, that plus the addition of the pass rush. I mean, Richard Sherman is healthier than he was a year ago. The question is, has Ahkello Witherspoon seen the light? If you ask me, the most physically talented, I was going to say member of the secondary, but he might be the most physically talented player on the team as far as the position he plays. Ahkello Witherspoon is up there. I mean, he is just very gifted as far as his size, as far as his speed, as far as his movement. If he's able to put it all together, that's a very formidable cornerback that they've got there. That hasn't happened at this point, but he had a strong spring. So, yeah, I think that sort of a natural maturation of that group, plus the addition of a real edge rush, good pass rush, should translate into, I would hope, more than 2 interceptions, which is what they had last year. That's got to be a major focus for this defense. Takeaways were just abysmal. If you have as few as the 49ers did, 5 altogether, you can't expect to have even a decent defense. It's going to be a bad defense.
I want to stay in the secondary for a moment. They moved Tavarius Moore to safety during the offseason program after Jimmy Ward got hurt, and it sounded initially like the move was just because of the injury. They just needed some bodies back there, and Moore was a safety in college, but the plan was to move him back to cornerback. Is that still the plan, or do you think that he can emerge as a starting safety option in a group of safeties that really has 0 proven starters in it?
zero proven starters, but a lot of bodies, and that's the question. Yes, I do think he's going to stay at safety. I just went back and I read a story that I wrote in the Bee a couple of years ago after Tarvarius Moore was drafted, and it was his position coach, Jeff Hafley, who's no longer here, who thought that he could transition to cornerback, had all the earmarks of a cornerback in the system, and he was the one that really pushed for Moore to move to safety. Hafley's not here now, Joe Woods is, so there's no one really with that idea in his mind on staff anymore, and so I think Moore wants to be a safety. They obviously have an opening at safety. Like I said, though, there's a lot of bodies. There are two guys ahead of him right now, Jimmy Ward and Adrian Colbert. DJ Reed played a little safety last year. Anton Exum played there last year. So he's got to, work his way up. He was the third safety at this point, or during the spring. So there's a lot of room for him to make up. But as you noted, I don't think that anybody has a lock on that starting position at this point. There is the ability to kind of move up in the pecking order for Tarvarius Moore.
Matt Barrows covers the 49ers for The Athletic. He joins us right now. Matt, you wrote in your excellent Q&A here about the wide receiver position. The Niners generally keep 6 players, and you write, and I agree, obviously. It looks like they have 8 with a good shot at making the team. But is it possible, or should I say likely, that they've got 8 maybe average to above average receivers, but no real go-to guy? Or do you think they have their eye on at least one guy that might rise above and be a true NFL-worthy number one?
Shanahan believes that Dante Pettis is the only true number one worthy receiver on his team, or at least that's what he thought last year. We'll have to see with Deebo Samuel. He's not signed, and he didn't practice in the spring very much either, so it's hard to say at this point. But Pettis seems to be the one that Shanahan at least feels can be very special. And we saw it in spurts last year. I mean, he's just got such a wiggle to him. He's very, very difficult for a cornerback to cover one-on-one. And, that in combination with Jimmy Garoppolo should equal magic. The issue with him is staying on the field. I mean, he got hurt a handful of times. He was in the lineup. He was out of the lineup. I didn't feel like any of the, far be it for me to question the severity of an injury, but none of these injuries were like huge hits that he was taking. They're sort of kind of caught in the wash type thing. So he's got to learn how to kind of take these tackles and learn how to stay healthy. I mean, it's a hard thing to ask a player to do, but George Kittle seemed to catch on to that last year. He was hurt a lot as a rookie, played all 16 games as a second-year player, and then, of course, had the best season as a receiving tight end in NFL history. That's what Dante Pettis needs to do, and he's got the talent to do that. And he's very versatile. He's got speed. He's got ability to get open. He's smart. He's got all of those things. He just needs to stay on the field.
Talking Niners with Matt Barrows of The Athletic. You also cover this, too. I think it's a fascinating question, Matt, with the Niners not having their top 2 picks signed right now going into training camp, and that could change any second. We see that there is a rookie scale, and the thought would be, well, they're all set on what they're getting paid, so why the heck are we having any holdouts? And you go on to explain, rightfully so, that it's the deferments. It's how they're getting paid. With a looming strike coming up, how likely do you think maybe the NFL and the Players Association get together and say, listen, it probably benefits us both in some way. Why not just, could we at least for first and maybe second round picks get to a point where everything is standard for every spot? In other words, deferments, bonuses, the entire thing is standard for each spot, and we just don't ever have any holdouts for draft picks.
Yeah, that would be wonderful, but I mean, it's sort of pointing to that being a huge bone of contention if the NFL and the NFLPA started to negotiate on that. I mean, the NFL would want it, and some teams want to pay those deferred. It's the guaranteed money that we're talking about, and how it's doled out. And some teams are smaller market teams, and they use that year's revenue to pay the player an installment at the end of the year. And you can, understand why the Cincinnati Bengals, for example, might want to do it that way. And, as Kyle alluded to earlier in his question about it, some of these agents want to just change the way some of these teams do business, and use the threat of a holdout to sort of set a precedent or to go against the precedent that has already been set by that team to get them out of their comfort zone in how they write these contracts. So it's a good question whether that's going to come up. I'm sure fans and the media would certainly be all for that, because you don't want to hear about a guy who's never played a down, who missed most of the spring, and both Bosa and Deebo Samuel missed most of the spring practices with a soft tissue injury. You don't want to hear about them then missing some training camp practices while they haggle over a contract that should be set in stone from the get-go. So that's bad for everybody. It's bad for the league. It's bad for the player. It's bad for the sport. So, it would behoove both of those two sides to eradicate that, but that doesn't always mean that they're going to find some sort of happy medium there.
Well, bringing this interview full circle, we talked about you starting out being a billionaire and driving a Ferrari. I don't know what the Barrows Mobile is, but I do know you've got to commute sometimes back and forth to training camp. Whatever it does cost you in gas, I can guarantee you that's more than what a monthly subscription to The Athletic would cost you. Incredibly cheap, incredibly good, phenomenal layout both on your phone, tablet, and of course on your computer. And Matt Barrows, one of our many friends over The Athletic, go check it out and subscribe today. How's that for a spot for you? Matt Barrows joining us for the first of many times this season. Matty, we appreciate you.
You're welcome. And I don't spend any gas to get to work. I just jump aboard that train, and it takes me right past the field.
Well, all right. Well, there goes my whole plug for The Athletic.
It's hard on the knees when I jump off the caboose at the end, but
All right. Well, good luck with that train in your backyard, and we'll talk to you soon, buddy. Thank you.
All right. Anytime, guys. Talk to you soon.
Take care. That's Matt Barrows.
The Drive.